I rise today to speak on behalf of the millions of Americans who know our nation is desperately in need of health care reform. Traveling across Colorado this past year, a common theme surfaced as I spoke with families, health care providers, and businesses alike. They all want a health care system that tackles costs, improves quality, and puts their needs first. And I've heard, like I know the presiding officer has in his home state of Delaware, just too many stories of Coloradans who've paid a lifetime of health care premiums in order to provide for their family, all to have an insurance company drop their coverage because a wife or a husband or a child became ill. Visiting with health care providers themselves, I've heard about the waste and abuse in our system. They've all pleaded with me to have common sense reforms that get them back to the business that they thought they were entering years ago, the business of caring for their fellow Americans beset by illness and disease. And Mr. President, I hear from small business owners who continue to see double-digit increases in insurance costs, in many cases for the 9th or the 10th or even more years in a row. They want to see relief, these small business owners, not for themselves, but because they don't want to have to choose between laying off workers and leaving their workers vulnerable to medical bankruptcies. Decade after decade, we've seen how the fine print of insurance company policies put shareholder interests above those of American families, and how partisanship has prevented the kind of progress everyone agrees is sorely needed. Well, Mr. President, I have good news. Despite all the ugly rhetoric, distortions, and misrepresentations we've heard, Coloradans and the rest of the country can finally rest assured that someone has put their interests first. This week, I watched as President Obama signed into law the kind of reforms that will free Americans from the shackles of never-ending cost increases, dropped coverage, and unfair practices that put profits above the provision of care. Mr. President, throughout this past fall and winter, I joined you and the rest of our freshman class here on the floor of the chamber repeatedly to talk about the urgent need for health reform. We shot down false claims, challenged the phony reasoning that was out there, and pointed out where the rhetoric ends and reality begins. And over the past few days, many more of our colleagues from this side of the aisle have compellingly and eloquently explained how important the new health reform law is to both the American people and to our American economy. The fact is, Mr. President, that this historic bill signed by the President saves lives, saves money, and it saves Medicare. And bringing this long debate to a close, I want to speak directly to the people of Colorado. It's important that they know how these health insurance reforms will benefit their families and the rest of our great state. As a result of the President signing the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act into law, the parents of Colorado's 1.2 million children can sleep easy starting this year, knowing that insurance companies no longer have the right to deny their kids health care coverage because of a pre-existing condition. Also starting in 2010, almost 500,000 young adults, Mr. President, in Colorado who would otherwise be kicked off their parents' health care policies can maintain that coverage through to their 27th birthday. This is particularly welcome to me, as I know it is to many, many Coloradans, as I have 2 college-age kids who fit into the category I just described. Mr. President, we have 575,000 seniors in our Medicare program, and for every single one of them, this new law will protect, I want to emphasize that, protect their guaranteed benefits and immediately allow them to get preventative care with absolutely no copay or out-of-pocket costs. This added benefit, contrary to what we've heard, will increase their health care coverage under the Medicare program so that our seniors can continue to live happy and healthy lives. This new law goes to great lengths to help slow the growth of health care costs. And by doing so, it's projected that these lower costs will allow Colorado's employers to hire up to 6,500 new employees each year in our state. And for as many as 68 60,000 Colorado small businesses, health reform will immediately begin providing millions of dollars in tax credits so that they can afford to offer health insurance to their employees. Mr. President, yesterday we sat here and cast 56 votes as Democrats to make final improvements to the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act. And it will, in that reconciliation measure we passed yesterday, provide prescription drug relief as well for our Colorado seniors. More than 100,000 Colorado seniors, like my friend Frank Blakely in Colorado Springs, will pay less for prescription drugs. Right now, these seniors hit what we all know here as the Medicare Part D donut hole, which means they have to pay thousands of dollars directly out of pocket for their medicines. But beginning this year, every one of these seniors will receive a $250 check to help offset those costs, and we'll begin to close the overall gap in Medicare coverage so that we completely fill this donut hole by the year 2020. And you know this will be really welcome relief to those on fixed incomes all across the U.S. because it'll, Mr. President, it'll free up scarce retirement dollars to visit family members, help pay a grandchild's college tuition, or even to help, in some cases, put food on the table. I think one of the overriding features of health reform is the freedom that it will give to Coloradans and hardworking Americans. The freedom to change jobs, to launch a business, to even start a family while knowing that health care coverage will be there for them when they need it. Americans need to know that the country won't leave them to fend for themselves when an insurance company denies or drops their coverage. They deserve peace of mind and to know that someone is on their side. Now, Mr. President, over the last few days, we've heard a lot of the same misleading rhetoric that we did back in August by those who were dead set on levying accusations rather than working on real reform. Well, health reform has become the law of the land, and the American people don't have to wait any longer for these important reforms. The legislation we've passed will establish a sturdy foundation upon which we will build, improve, and strengthen access to health care in America. Will there be mistakes made along the way? I don't doubt it. Mr. President, I'm a lifelong mountain climber, and I know from experience that any difficult climb includes storms, and you make a mistake finding your route along the way, but what really matters is you dust yourself off and you move forward. I think there have been a lot of storms on this journey so far, and it hasn't been perfectly smooth, but it's been in the right direction. And despite our stumbles and twists and turns along the way, we kept our eye on the summit that was in front of us. We're providing quality, affordable coverage for every American is a reality. Every expedition that's successful, in my experience, has a leader. And I want to take a moment to recognize our leader, Senate Majority Leader Reid. He's literally had the health and well-being of millions of Americans on his shoulders. Some would say the weight of the world. That's a heavy backpack, Mr. President. But he's, at the same time as he's shouldered that load, he's just been an unwavering advocate for reform, and he's exemplified the American resilience, which has helped make our nation the greatest nation on earth. I'd also like to thank my staff, especially Jake Swanton and John Rayburn, who've worked tirelessly to fight for Colorado and make quality, affordable health coverage a reality for millions of Americans. And as I close, Mr. President, I just want to say how proud I am that the health care bills that we passed this week will modernize our health care delivery system, increase much-needed choice and competition within the health insurance industry, and help put our economy back on track while clearly improving the financial security of middle-class working families. This has been a historic week for Colorado and for the American people. The victory, of course, isn't for the Senate or the House or the President or for our political party. It's for the American people. And I've certainly been humbled to have been given the opportunity to serve my great state during this unforgettable and sustained and long debate. And I look forward to the important climbs that still await us as we implement this very, very important legislation.